Please welcome Marcy Freeman.
Thanks for sticking in here. I'm like the last one that's keeping you from the paid talent. So I was really struggling to put together a set for tonight. And I was thinking, I couldn't remember what I did last year when we had the open mic night. And I couldn't find the video, and I thought, well, if I don't remember, nobody else is going to remember. It's kind of like when I'm getting ready for Shabbos morning when I decide to come to shul, and I try to pick out an outfit, and then I think, was that the same outfit and hat that I wore last time I went to shul? And I think, well, if I can't remember, no one else will remember, except Sarah and maybe Leah. And I gotta tell you, I really was nervous to come here today. I mean, I've taken some stand-up class at Second City, I've done a bunch of open mic nights, I had one paid gig, a 40-minute set at Senior Apartments at the 2 o'clock Friday afternoon time slot with a bunch of 80 to 100-year-olds, and I only saw one of them sleeping, so I think that was a win. But to come here and do a set in front of all of you, and I know so many of you, and you know us, and if you've heard my comedy, a lot of it is about my family and my kids and my husband. So I remember that old Brady Bunch thing. If you're really nervous, then just imagine the audience in their underwear, or maybe just Steve Shapiro. But I look out and I see so many of my doctors out there, and you've seen me in my underwear, so that's close enough. So, clap if you've been or are a working mom. That was a trick question because all moms are working. When I first started my career and got married, I never thought, I want to have it all and do the whole working mom thing. And then I had kids, and it's a lot of work, like a lot of work. Like laundry is not an incremental load per week per child, it's exponential. So I had to go back to the office to relax, to have adult conversations, to make sure I showered at least a few times a week. Now, my mother is from a different generation, and she felt that all moms should be home with their kids, and she was trying to sell me on that idea. So she said, I bet you save money by staying home full time because you wouldn't have to spend money on all those fancy business suits. You could just sit around all day in your sweatpants. That's so inspiring. Who knew 25 years later we'd all be sitting around all day in our sweatpants and working? So there got to be an opportunity for me. We were living in Rochester, New York at the time. We had 2 young children, and I got an opportunity to move to Boston. And the first thing my husband said is, Boston? They don't know how to drive. I hate the sports teams. We are not moving to Boston. And then he called all his male friends, and he said, if your wife got a job somewhere else, would you follow her? Like, am I losing any masculinity points if I do this? It ended up being a better opportunity for him than for me, so we decided to make the move. Now we have to tell our parents. So first, I call my mom. Mom, I got a great job offer, and we're moving to Boston. The first thing she said, does anybody know this, because I told it before? First thing she said, are you and your husband separating? Probably the first time in my life I was speechless. Then we have to tell my in-laws who lived nearby at the time, and they said, Boston? Now the kids are going to talk like that! So we moved to Boston, and actually I got contacted by Lifetime Television. They used to do a news magazine, maybe they still do, called New Attitudes. So it's like a 60 Minutes, but it focuses more on issues that are important to women. So they wanted to do a segment on men who relocate for their wives' careers, and they decided to follow us. So they came to film at my office and at my husband's office and at home. And the producer comes in with her camera and she goes, look, I'm only going to film you from like the neck up. So if you talk with your hands, like exaggerate the use of talking with your hands so you don't look like just a talking head. So they come, they film us, and it was airing like a month later. I told my family and my friends to make sure at that time VCR to tape it. And so after they all watched it, first my mother calls. well, gee, it was really more about your husband. Yeah, okay. And then my brother calls and says, you talk with your hands too much. My sister calls and said, did you do your own hair and makeup, or did they do it for you? I said, I did my own. She said, well, maybe next time you should have them do it for you. It's amazing I haven't spent more in therapy than I have. And in fact, early on when we had kids, we said, we need to start one of those 529 plans for therapy. Because, there's nothing you can do so bad as a parent that a few years of therapy can't fix when you get older. And we want to keep Audra employed. So we wanted to do this 529 plan because I didn't want to worry about it. I just want each generation to be a little less screwed up than the one before it, and that way they can just put it on the list for the therapist, and we got the money saved. And these days, it might be a better investment than college. So now we're certainly not without our parenting fails. One thing, and anyone who's been parents or are parents, you know that when you make a threat to your children, you have to follow through, or they'll never believe you again. So one time, we had just come from watching my husband in the Brotherhood, they call it the Brotherhood Men's Club softball game, and I was driving home, and two of my kids were fighting in the car. And I said, you know what? If you don't stop fighting, you're going to get out and walk home. Now, we were only about a mile from home. It was like, I don't know, the second safest town in Massachusetts. And of course, they didn't stop fighting. And I still remember peeling the hands of one of my children off of the arm of the bucket seats in the minivan and leaving them on the side of the road. And I thought, well, look, my husband's going to be coming soon behind. I mean, it's a bunch of Jewish guys playing softball. They're all over 40. How long could it take, right? So then I figured my husband will see him, he'll pick him up. And I go home. So he comes home, my husband. I said, did you see the kids and pick them up? He's like, no. I said, oh, crap. So he went back out to go look for them, and in the meantime, they come home. And the kids are like, hey, this really nice woman picked us up in their car, and I got to sit in the front seat. And they were too small for the front seat. I was like, oh my God, this is really, really, really going the wrong way. And then I got a phone call from a woman whose kids were in Hebrew school with mine. And she said, my neighbor called and said there were a couple kids that were making a lot of noise on our lawn, and I saw who it was, and I knew that they're okay, that this woman my neighbor could take them home. And I said, well, don't call social services, they were fighting, I had to kick them out. She goes, no, I've done that too. But the learning here is that it's so amazing to be in a wonderful Jewish community, but you can't even punish your kids without somebody coming in and trying to help. So, anybody Seinfeld fans? Seinfeld fans here? Okay, great, clap your hands. What's your favorite episode? Shout them out.
Contest.
Anybody else?
Puppy
shirt. Yada, yada, yada. All right, great. So the early 90s, we went to see Seinfeld live with another couple, and afterward I bought some swag. I bought this long sleeve t-shirt. It was this really soft cotton, mint green, and it said, Master of My Domain, Seinfeld. Jacob picked that one up right away. And I wore it every weekend, all of my schlumpy clothes weekends with, the sweatpants, and I wore that long-sleeved t-shirt. It was just my favorite. It was just comfortable and cozy, and I didn't have any other long-sleeve t-shirts. Then my kids grew up, and they watched the reruns of Seinfeld. And they got to that episode, and all three of them turned around at the same time and said, Mom, you can never wear that shirt again. Now, another thing, if you've got, especially teenagers, kids are horrible at covering their tracks. They think they're super smart and they can, do all these things behind our back and we don't know, but they are just so horrible at covering their tracks. So one time we went away for the weekend and we left two of our kids back home alone. I mean, they were in their late teens, one was in college. And then we come back and my husband goes to throw out, the kitchen garbage into the bin in the garage, and he says, either we've had skunks in the garage or someone's been doing some weed. And he opens the top of the can, the garbage can, and there's just an empty baggie with a few leaves in there, just sitting on the top. Like, he didn't even try to bury it. Come on. So he confronted them, and they, of course, fessed up really quickly. And then the one that was not involved said, and they were making pot brownies, and they melted butter in your meat pots. Now, I'm not sure what this says about me as a mom, but I was more upset about them melting butter in my meat pots than I were about them making pot brownies. So we caught them, so they brought out the pan and said, and there was like 2 pieces missing, and said, well, now that you know, maybe we can all share it as a family for dessert after Shabbat dinner this week. So let me think about it. And when they went to school the next day, I buried it in the backyard. And there's some really mellow chipmunks and squirrels for a while. I want to tell a quick story about my father. My father was a professor of mechanical engineering. He did his thesis in something like thermodynamics of moisture. I don't even know. But I'm pretty sure that thermo means temperature or heat. Somebody who's a scientist can tell me. So one year, my father just, of course, was crazy about my mother, always wanted to do surprises and things to make her happy. And so one year, for her birthday, in August, he bought her an ice cream cake. You remember the Carvel cakes with the layer of vanilla and the layer of chocolate and the little chocolate crunchies in the middle? But he wanted to surprise her, so he hid it in the closet. In my closet, actually. So by the time he was ready to sing happy birthday and bring out the cake, all that was left were the chocolate crunchies. Which if my kids had actually learned anything from their grandfather, they might have figured out a way to melt the pot brownie so they could, get rid of their evidence. One last quick story. We have a bunch of friends from college that get together for New Year's for years. We've been getting together for New Year's, and often there's a question of the year. One year we were still in our 40s. We were saying, okay, if you had to retire today, how much money would you have to have saved? So one year, the question was for the women, if you had to give up chocolate or sex for the rest of your life, what would it be? And all the women were saying, sex, I'm not giving up chocolate. And one woman said, oh, I would give up chocolate in a heartbeat. I was like, why is this woman different? I realized she was the only one who wasn't Jewish. Because we're masters of our domain. All right, well that's my time. I need to make sure that I have time to go to the bathroom, because at my age, after 3 kids, I don't want to laugh too hard at when we bring on the title guy. So thank you again.